So, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Can I get a couple of thumbs up if you can hear me? Ace, thank you. So first of all, thank you very much for everyone for joining. Delighted to be here today. By way of introduction, my name's Michael Feeney. I'm an account executive with Reputation. Been with the business about 4.5 years, but for about the last decade I've worked within the field of customer experience. So the good news is you're not going to be hearing much from me. We're delighted to be joined by Ollie from Big Bus Tours. So we'll let Ollie do a quick introduction in a second, but in terms of who Reputation are, we help businesses manage their entire online reputation. That's the easiest way to think of it. So wherever customer feedback is left, whether it's on a social channel, a review platform, whether it's in a survey, whether that's structured or not, Reputation pulls it all in, consolidates it all, and then analyzes it to help you understand what is going well or perhaps not well with your brand promise. And that's what we're here today to talk about. Because it's all around always knowing what your customer's experience is and being able to act on it. And that's become increasingly hard in a digital world. So without further ado, I'd just like to hand over to Ollie initially to do a very quick introduction, and then we'll kick things off with a few questions.
Hi guys, so I'm Ollie, I'm VP Customer at Big Bus Tours. Big Bus is the world's largest privately owned hop-on, hop-off tour company. So we do sightseeing in 26 cities around the world. Essentially, the sun never sets on a Big Bus tour. There's always somebody running around on one of our buses, and thus that means also there's always somebody leaving reviews on our services as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Ollie. So we'll talk a lot today about the overall brand promise. So let's get into that first. So what is the Big Bus Tours brand promise to your customers?
The brand promise is, the aim is to turn tourists into explorers. So people come to us, and whilst we want to show them around cities, and it should be some structure there, the idea is that we're able to deliver them to the best locations, tell them everything that's there along the way, but kind of on their own terms, as opposed to kind of a guided, scheduled tour.
Yeah, like that, tourists into explorers. And I think if anybody's done a Big Bus tour, they are like such a cool way of seeing a city. So just tell us a little bit more then about where feedback comes into play. So how do you leverage the feedback that you get across the volume of cities in which you operate? How do you leverage it all to fulfill that brand promise?
Initially, it was with difficulty. Obviously, when you've got this many cities, 26 of them, and this many touch points for customers, it's quite hard to get all of the feedback they have and put it into a place where you can look at it, analyze, and then work on it. At the moment, we collect feedback via NPS, which is a Wi-Fi survey when they connect on the buses. We have post-tour surveys that people complete as well, and naturally, there's a bunch of feedback that we get through online review sites, Google, Viator, TripAdvisor, Trustpilot, you name it.
And then, I mean, does social form part of that? So like Facebook reviews, Instagram, etc. as well?
Yeah, we get a lot of socials too. Less so the reviews on Facebook, but what you tend to get there is some complaints through, and then you get that natural kind of advocate conversation that will happen as responses to your posts, or even people posting their own sort of self-made content online as well.
Amazing, no, super. So in terms of like the audience today, what advice would you give to them around either like leveraging customer feedback or just generally getting more feedback?
The main advice I'd have is to try and get it all in one place. The difficulty that you're going to have is if you're collecting surveys on one platform, NPS through another, and you're analyzing your reviews on yet another, it's going to be quite disparate. And for the people actually doing the work, what it also means is logging into 3 different platforms to do 3 different things. And then for your stakeholders, if they come to you asking for a report on, say, your external rating over the last 6 months in 5 cities and the corresponding NPS score, what you don't want to be doing is spending 3 hours in different platforms, collating that data, putting it to an Excel sheet, and then delivering it to them. If you can have it all in one spot, easy to analyze, you remove the busy work, your time spent reporting can be replaced with time spent analyzing what your customers actually have to say.
Yeah, and I think just to echo that point, if you think about the volume of places that people can leave feedback for your brand today, it's just exploded. Like there is hundreds of review platforms, the social channels, to your point, on surveys, and unfortunately, this is whether you are asking for it or not. Customers are more vocal than they've ever been before, and that does pose a big challenge because what you say about your brand, i.e. the brand promise, may be very different from what someone sees about you online, and it's about that gap and about narrowing that gap, really. No, cool. So, simple question, but what does customer service mean to Big Bus Tours?
I suppose everything. We call it customer satisfaction, but it's our product that we're giving. Whilst it's an audio commentary and maybe the ability to go around the city, the service itself is key, because this is what people are going to remember and what's what they're going to come back to when they write their review. And we have lots of different things for people to, lots of different channels where we're giving customer service. We're online with our BPO 24/7. We have customer service representatives in the street who are there. They sell tickets, but mainly they're helping customers around the cities.
Yep.
And we have our drivers as well, who are also, helping people who are normally in a city they haven't seen before. 9 times out of 10, they don't understand the language that they're speaking, but they still want to have an authentic experience, get to see the city and without being lost. And if you don't serve them properly, it all starts to fall down in kind of a domino effect, and then it hits your reviews, and then you get fewer customers and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you've touched on it a couple of times there. You're a global business. How many countries in which do you operate?
So we're in 19 countries and 26 cities. Yeah.
So 26 cities, 19 countries. How do you ensure that things are happening the way you'd want them to when people can be waking up in LA right the way through to doing a tour in Singapore and everywhere in between? Like, how do you manage that globally within a global business?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously a lot of it happens at a local level. We've got teams of people in every city whose job is just that, to give the customer service. But what you can't have is a centralized office, say in London, handing out KPIs and people just looking at them and not really knowing how to act on them or even what they are. If you give a team of, 26 different teams an NPS KPI of 50, but no visibility on it apart from maybe a weekly report from Central or a monthly telling off from a director because it's not good enough, you're not going to get engagement from the local teams. And if they're not engaged there, or they don't understand what it is they're doing, and if they can't see the effect that they're having on the business, generally you're not going to see any improvement in your customer service. It just becomes a thing that they do. You can respond to the reviews, but if it's just I'm ticking a KPI target rather than seeing the effect, then it's not going to have the same ability that if you give everyone visibility on what they're doing.
I am frantically writing that down because it's super relevant, right? Nobody likes that monthly telling off report saying you haven't responded to enough reviews or you've not done that. And that's where it becomes, you don't want it to become punitive on your staff as you've not done this again, and almost like a stick to beat them with. But also from a customer standpoint, you cannot just respond to feedback for the sake of it. There's got to be a strategic reason as to why you're engaging on channels. Whether that is, we want to convert more customers, we want to improve our SEO, we want to beat our competition, whatever it is, you can't just respond for the sake of it. So if you think about that then, can you give us a couple of examples of where you've used customer feedback from any source, surveys, reviews, social, whatever, where you've then made a change on the back of it?
Yeah, for sure. So it was only, I think it was 3.5 years ago that we started putting all of our feedback in one spot. And what we started to notice, once we were able to put it in the same place and look at trends, is a big complaint that people had, or one of the things that was scoring us lower, was our audio experience. So obviously there's always going to be the odd late bus due to traffic, but the audio experience, now the commentary was working, was a touch point on the post-tour surveys, the verbatim and the NPS,
yep.
And in the reviews. People were saying that the audio experience that you've got, it can always be better, both in content and delivery. This was a trend, again, that we hadn't really noticed until we put everything in one spot. So since then, Big Bus has gone back, and over the last 3.5 years, we've completely revamped our audio. So where we used to have on your left and on your right traditional style sightseeing tour, we moved more towards a podcast style conversational tour. And the interesting thing with how you can see it in Rep is that you could see where we were when we made the decision with our overall rating, which was at 3.9. And then as we started to roll out this new commentary city by city, you could see our overall rating go up in line with the rollout of the new commentary. So not only could we identify what the problem was, when we started to remedy it, you could see it working.
Yeah, again, it's kind of answered to an extent the next question, but it's super relevant once again, because it's not just about collecting feedback or responding or taking notice of these things for the sake of it. You can then use that insight from your customer's experience to make a positive change. Like if nobody likes your audio equipment, and that's the reason why they're going to your competition, you can change it. And if you think about your own customer journey within your business, if you don't have visibility over what people like and what they don't like about dealing with your company, your brand, your location, whatever. Like, there's a bit of guesswork going on. So if you think about the other piece then, so I know you've talked about there the sort of impact that it had around, we've gone from, I think you said, was it a 3.5 star?
It was a 3.9 we had
3.9 star, and that's now got increased, so that's superb. Within the last couple of months, you've started to analyze competitor feedback as well. So how are you using that to kind of shape the offering, and just give it a bit more context on that, if you would?
The competitor feedback is far more useful at a local level. You know, it's always good to have a benchmark on how you're doing against your competition. In the sightseeing industry on hop-on, hop-off tours, the only way we had to measure ourselves against our competition was literally to sit at the side of the road on the routes of us and our competitors and just count how many people you think are in the bus, and you write it down, and then at the end you see, are they carrying more people than me, or am I carrying most? And then you get like a market share idea. But what you haven't got is an easy way to search that verbatim, remembering that if you're having to log into 5 different platforms to respond to your own feedback on reviews, you're unlikely to then log into those 5 different platforms and check your competitors' rating in the same spot. So now we've got CI, we're able to see, we still count what they're carrying because we still like to count people on buses, but you can also see what those guys are saying, and it's all in one spot again. So you can have leaderboards throughout your own business and how we're doing as a global team, but then you can see how those individual teams are doing against their competitors. It's another benchmark to show your local teams, okay, what you're doing is actually having an effect, and again, something that they can access the whole time without having to ask for a report or be sent a telling off. They can always just have a quick login and look, we've just had a busy day yesterday, or there was traffic, how do we perform against the competitors? Really useful.
Yeah. No, that's, again, really interesting. That, again, market share piece, what you were doing originally when you had a few sites, it just can't scale beyond a few. You're talking like 3 or 4 locations, and that's when those challenges come on, and yeah, I do not envy the person that was auditing and doing spot checks on the people going onto buses, because I stupidly took geography to degree level, so I did a lot of that sort of stuff. Cool, so final question for me then is around the future for Big Bus Tours. So I know there's been a lot of change within your business, there's been new markets opening up, but why don't you just give us a bit of a flavor as to what the next few months holds, what the next year holds, whatever you feel.
Yeah, Philly, so I think especially in tourism, technologically we've always been a bit behind the curve. I mean, I remember in my first job in tourism booking coach trips on a repurposed access sheet. But over time, we're trying to modernize and improve. So in the last year, Big Bus has launched its AI, powered by Satisfy Labs. It sits in front of all our customer chats, and we're getting an 80% deflection rate and a CSAT score of 4.7, which is the same as our agents. What that's done is enable our agents to handle the escalations that they can much better. They have more time, but they also have more time for sales. So we've been pushing sales within the team because they're concentrating less on basic queries that could be answered on the website. The idea being that we eventually reach cost neutrality. We achieved that in April of last year for 1 month. The customer service team, they generated more cash than we spent on their productive hours, and the intention is to advance on that AI. So we're looking at making a virtual ticketing agent, so the different touch points we have around the city where there's not a CSR, we can have the AI then sell them tickets, and then later on the same will be outbound. So once you buy your ticket online, it's going to send your ticket to you via WhatsApp, then it's going to ask you if you need any help, and that way we can continue the conversation with our customer rather than just relying on inbound chats from them.
Amazing. No, that's super useful. Well, I was going to see if anybody in the audience had any specific question they had. I think we are pretty much on time for finishing, I believe. So Reputation, we are at stand D26. If anyone wants to have a chat about any aspect of their customer experience, their brand promise, we'll be over there all day. But more importantly, I just want to say a massive thank you, Ollie, for your help and assistance on that. It's been really interesting hearing that Big Bus Tours story of how you manage that feedback globally. So yeah, big round of applause for Ollie. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you guys.